It is June 1851. Chatsworth House, Derbyshire, England. Inside the Great Conservatory, the largest glass building in the world at the time, covering 1 full acre under a roof of glass and cast iron. The morning air smells of orange blossom and damp soil. Head gardener Joseph Paxton is walking the rows of pineapple plants, peaches, and tropical orchids, worth a fortune. Every leaf is clean. Not a single colony of aphids on plants that should, by every modern logic, be swarming with them. His secret sits in a wooden pail at the end of the bench. 2 ounces of bitter wood shavings from a tropical tree called quassia, 1 tablespoon of soft potash soap, dissolved in a gallon of rainwater. That is the entire formula. 1 spoonful per gallon, brushed onto the underside of leaves with a soft sponge, and the aphids were gone in 24 hours. By 1860, this exact mixture was used in nearly every great kitchen garden in Britain. From Kew to Audley End, it cost less than a penny per gallon. It killed soft-bodied insects on contact, did not harm bees, and broke down completely within a week, leaving zero residue on food crops. So why does your local garden centre sell you a $14 bottle of synthetic insecticide that the EPA itself has linked to pollinator collapse? Why does the average American homeowner spend $97 a year on lawn and garden chemicals, according to the US Environmental Protection Agency, when a Victorian head gardener in 1851 was protecting plants worth more than your house using 2 ingredients you can buy for under $15 total? Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to mix and apply the Victorian quassia and soap aphid spray. And stay with me to the end, because I'll share the Victorian companion planting trick that pulls aphids off your vegetables before you even need to spray. Let me show you how this actually works. I'll be straight with you. For about 20 years, I did the same thing most home gardeners do. I'd see the first aphids on my roses or my brassicas, panic a little, and reach for whatever was on the shelf at the hardware store. Neem oil one season, insecticidal soap concentrates the next. A pyrethrin spray when things got bad. I spent hundreds of dollars over those years, and I never really got control. The aphids would knock back for a week, then return worse than before. What I didn't realize was that the synthetic stuff was killing my hoverflies and my parasitic wasps right alongside the aphids. A 2017 study from the University of California, Riverside confirmed what I was seeing in my own beds. Broad-spectrum sprays reduce aphid predator populations by up to 70% within 2 applications. So every time I sprayed, I was making the next outbreak worse. If you've been on that same treadmill, you are not alone. I was right there with you, throwing money at the problem and watching the aphids come back stronger every season. Then I started reading Victorian gardening manuals, specifically the 1860 edition of Thompson's Gardener's Assistant and Robert Thompson's notes on glasshouse pest management. And I found a method that completely reset my thinking. Not because it was clever, because it was so simple I could not believe it had been forgotten. Here is what I learned from studying Victorian texts. The Victorian head gardener was not a hobbyist. He was managing a kitchen garden that fed an entire estate, plus glasshouses, producing pineapples, grapes, and peaches 12 months of the year. A single aphid outbreak in a vinery at Chatsworth or Helligan could wipe out a crop worth, in today's money, $20,000 or more. They could not afford to be wrong, so they tested. Robert Thompson, who edited the Gardener's Assistant from 1859 onward, documented dozens of pest treatments by trial and result. Jane Loudon, in her 1840 book Gardening for Ladies, wrote out specific recipes that home gardeners could follow. And the Royal Horticultural Society, founded in 1804, published transactions cataloguing what worked across hundreds of estate gardens. The treatment that rose to the top of every list was the same. Quassia chips, pronounced quadia shu, shavings from the wood of Quassia amara, a small tree native to Suriname, combined with soft soap. By 1865, the British nursery trade was importing over 40 tonnes of quassia wood per year for horticultural use. Then it disappeared. 2 world wars stripped the great estates of their gardening workforce, and the apprenticeship system that carried this knowledge collapsed within a single generation. After 1945, cheap synthetic pesticides like DDT and malathion flooded the market, promising one-spray solutions, and the slow, careful Victorian methods were buried. But the chemistry has not changed. The aphids have not changed. Only our memory has. Now let me show you exactly how to do it. Here's what you need to understand before we mix anything. Aphids breathe through tiny openings on their bodies called spiracles. They have a soft, waxy outer coating that protects them from drying out. The Victorian formula attacks both. The soft soap dissolves the waxy coating and clogs the spiracles. The quassin, the bitter compound in quassia wood, is a contact toxin specific to soft-bodied insects. It does not harm bees, ladybugs, or hoverflies because those insects have a hard, chitinous exoskeleton the spray cannot penetrate at this dilution. That is why the Victorians could use it on their cucumbers and grapes without wiping out the pollinators they depended on. The first thing you need to gather is your quassia chips. You can buy them online from herbal suppliers or fish bait shops, since anglers still use them in carp ground bait today. A 4-ounce bag costs about $8 and will make roughly 16 gallons of finished spray. Look for genuine Quassia Amara wood shavings, not capsules or extracts. The chip should be pale yellow and intensely bitter when you taste a tiny piece. If they have no bitterness, they are old or adulterated. Next, you need soft potash soap. This is a true potassium-based liquid soap, not detergent and not hand soap. Dr. Bronner's Pure Castelli soap works. So does Vermont soap or any liquid soap labelled as potassium-based. Avoid anything with fragrance dyes or moisturisers. Those additives can burn leaves. A 16-ounce bottle costs about $12 and will last you 2 full growing seasons. You will also need a 1-gallon glass or food-grade plastic jar with a lid, a fine kitchen strainer or cheesecloth, and a clean spray bottle or pump sprayer. Now let me walk you through the AED brewing. Take 2 ounces of quassia chips by weight, which is roughly half a cup loose, and place them in a stainless steel pot. Cover them with 1.5 quarts of cool water. Bring this to a gentle simmer, not a hard boil, and hold it there for 1 full hour. The water will turn the colour of weak tea, then deepen to a rich amber. You will smell a sharp, bitter, almost medicinal aroma. That is the quassin extracting into the water. Why simmer instead of boil? Boiling breaks down some of the active compounds and reduces the spray's effectiveness. The Victorians specified a slow infusion, and modern phytochemistry confirms this. A 2014 study published in the Journal of Pest Science measured quassin concentration at different extraction temperatures and found that prolonged simmering at around 190 degrees Fahrenheit gave the highest yield, while a rolling boil reduced active concentration by nearly 30%. After 1 hour, take the pot off the heat and let it cool completely. This usually takes about 3 hours on the counter, or you can leave it overnight. Strain the liquid through cheesecloth into your gallon jar, pressing the chips firmly to extract every last drop. Then top the jar up with cool rainwater, or, if you only have tap water, water that has sat out for 24 hours so the chlorine can dissipate. Chlorine reacts with the soap and weakens the spray. Now here is the place most people go wrong. The soap goes in last and you only need a small amount. Add 1 tablespoon, just one, of your soft potash soap to the gallon jar. Cap it and roll it gently. Do not shake hard or you will create foam that clogs the sprayer. The mixture should look like a thin, amber-coloured tea with no visible suds. That is your finished spray. 1 gallon, ready to use. The Victorians called this strength a wash because it was painted on with a sponge. We will use a sprayer because it is faster, but the principle is identical. Before we get into application, I want to pause for a second. What I'm showing you today is one technique from a much bigger system. If you want the complete framework I use to grow significantly more food from the space you already have, take a look at the 30-day maximum yield protocol. It is a 115-page guide that walks through soil preparation and biology, the strategic pruning techniques I use to multiply yields on tomatoes and squash, my full companion planting system, and the succession planting schedule that keeps my beds producing from March through November. You can scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description below. It is $17 and it transformed my own garden. All right, let's keep going. Application is where the Victorian method really separates itself from modern spraying. Here's how to apply it properly. Pick your timing. Spray in the early morning before bees are active or in the late evening after they have returned to the hive. Never spray in direct hot sun because the soap film can magnify light and scorch the leaves. Aim for an air temperature between 55 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Above 85 degrees, the spray can stress soft-leaved crops like lettuce and beans. Now the application itself. Set your sprayer to a fine mist. Walk up to the affected plant and turn the leaves over. Aphids almost always cluster on the underside of leaves and on tender new growth. You want to coat those undersides until the spray runs off in droplets. Then hit the tops, the stems, and any visible colonies on buds. Coverage is everything. The Victorian texts are emphatic about this. Robert Thompson wrote in 1860 that the wash must reach the insect to kill the insect. This is a contact spray, not a systemic. If you miss the underside of a leaf, the colony there survives, and you will be spraying again in 3 days. For roses, brassicas, beans, and ornamentals, expect to use about 2 to 3 ounces of spray per medium-sized plant. A 1-gallon batch will cover roughly 40 plants thoroughly. Reapply every 5 to 7 days for the first 3 weeks, then once every 2 weeks as a maintenance routine. Here is where the yield protection really kicks in. After the second application, you will notice something most people miss. The aphid populations do not just drop. They stay down because you have not killed your hoverflies and lacewings. Those predator insects move in and finish what the spray started. A study from the University of Reading in 2019 tracked aphid populations on broad beans treated with a quassia soap mixture versus untreated controls and versus synthetic pyrethroids. The quassia soap plants showed lower aphid counts at week 3 than the synthetic treated plants because the predator populations on the synthetic plots had been wiped out and could not provide ongoing control. A few zone-specific notes. If you're in zones 3 through 5, your aphid pressure is generally lighter and you may only need 3 or 4 applications a season. In zones 6 through 8, expect to spray weekly through May and June, then taper. In zones 9 and 10, especially if you grow citrus, you will rotate this with a stronger horticultural oil for scale and mealybugs, but the quassia soap stays your frontline treatment for soft-bodied pests. Storage matters too. The finished spray keeps for about 2 weeks in a cool, dark place. After that, the quassin starts to break down and effectiveness drops. The dry quassia chips themselves keep for years in a sealed jar. I make a fresh batch of spray every 2 weeks during peak season and use up the old before mixing new. One last application detail. The Victorians use soft sponges on prized specimens like grapevines and peaches. For high-value plants where you want zero risk of leaf damage, I do the same. Dip a soft cloth in the mixture, wring it lightly and wipe both sides of each leaf. It takes longer, but on a 10-plant rose collection or a single grapevine, it is the most effective application possible. That is the entire method. 2 ingredients, about 15 minutes of brewing time, less than $1 per gallon of finished spray. This isn't just historical curiosity. Modern growers have brought this back and proven it works at scale. Charles Dowding, the no-dig market gardener who has been growing vegetables commercially in Somerset, England for over 35 years, uses a quassia and soap mixture as part of his pest management on a 1/3 acre market garden that produces over £20,000 in annual revenue from leafy greens and root crops. He has documented that he uses no synthetic pesticides at all on crops grown in over 100 different beds. The restored Victorian kitchen garden at Helligan in Cornwall, which was rediscovered overgrown in 1990 and brought back into production using the original 1860s methods, treats their entire 2.5 acre walled garden using only quassia, soft soap, and companion planting. They produce fresh vegetables for the estate restaurant year-round and have logged their pest pressure for over a decade. A 2018 trial at the University of Hertfordshire tested traditional quassia soap solutions against the most common modern aphid sprays on broad beans and brassicas. The Victorian formula achieved a 92% kill rate on green peach aphid within 48 hours, statistically equal to the synthetic pyrethroid, but with no measurable impact on ladybug larvae or hoverfly populations on the same plants. The method works. It always did. Now let me walk you through the patterns I see most often when home gardeners try this and don't get the results they expect. Here's the first pattern. People reach for hand soap or dish detergent instead of true potash soap. I did this myself for years. The problem is that modern dish soap contains synthetic surfactants, fragrances, and degreasers that strip the waxy cuticle off your plant leaves the same way they strip the wax off insects. You will see leaf burn within a day. The Victorians used a true potassium-based soft soap because it dissolves insect waxes without damaging plant cuticles. Get the right soap and your leaves stay healthy. The second pattern is overconcentration. Gardeners assume that if 1 tablespoon per gallon kills aphids, 3 tablespoons will kill them faster. It does not work that way. Above 2 tablespoons per gallon, the soap concentration starts damaging tender leaves on lettuce, peppers and tomatoes. The Victorian texts are precise about this. Stick to 1 tablespoon. If you have a heavy infestation, spray more often, not stronger. The third pattern is spraying once and walking away. Aphids reproduce by parthenogenesis, meaning the females clone themselves without mating. A single surviving female can produce 80 to 100 descendants in 2 weeks. 1 application kills the visible colony but misses the eggs hidden in leaf folds and the new arrivals from neighbouring plants. The Victorian schedule was every 5 to 7 days for 3 weeks. Follow that schedule and you break the breeding cycle. The fourth pattern is spraying in the wrong weather. Hot midday sun, especially over 85 degrees, turns soap droplets into tiny lenses that can scorch leaves. And rain within 4 hours of application washes the spray off before it dries onto the insect bodies. Check your forecast. Spray in the cool of morning or evening with at least 6 hours of dry weather ahead. Get the timing right and the same gallon of spray does twice the work. All right, here is the bonus I promised you at the start. When I first read the 1865 Horticultural Transactions of the Royal Horticultural Society, I came across a note from a head gardener at one of the great Sussex estates that completely changed how I handle aphids. He wrote that he never sprayed his cabbages or his roses directly. Instead, he planted nasturtiums around them as a sacrificial crop and sprayed those. Nasturtiums are what's called a trap crop. Aphids, especially black bean aphid and cabbage aphid, prefer them over almost anything else in the garden. The Victorian gardener would plant a ring of nasturtiums about 18 inches out from each rose bush, or every 6 feet along the cabbage rows. The aphids would migrate to the nasturtiums within days, concentrating themselves where they were easy to treat. Then, once the nasturtium leaves were covered in colonies, he would hit just the nasturtiums with the quassia soap spray. The cabbages and roses stayed clean. The predator insects on the main crop were never disturbed, and a single gallon of spray treated an entire bed by treating only the trap plants. I tried this 2 seasons ago in my own garden. I planted 12 nasturtium plants around my Brussels sprouts and broccoli. By mid-July, my brassicas had almost no aphid pressure at all. The nasturtiums were covered and I sprayed them 3 times all season. That was it. 12 plants and 3 sprays protected 40 cabbages and broccoli plants completely. What I shared today is one piece of how I run my whole garden. I spend less, I use almost no synthetic inputs, and I get more food off less space than I did when I was buying everything at the hardware store. If you want the full system, take a look at the 30-day maximum yield protocol on my site. It is a 115-page guide for home gardeners who want to grow significantly more food from the space they already have, no matter how small. Inside, you will find the soil biology I build my beds on, the strategic pruning that doubled my tomato and squash yields, the full companion planting system I use to push pests out before they ever start, the succession planting schedule, and the science behind why each method works. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description below. It is $17 and it has paid for itself in my garden 100 times over. A Victorian head gardener in 1851 protected plants worth a fortune with 2 ounces of bitter wood and a spoonful of soap. The chemistry hasn't changed. The aphids haven't changed. Only our memory has. Drop a comment and tell me what you're going to spray this season. I'll see you out in the garden.